silo opened us up to a fictional world that's filled with questions from top to bottom. Every single scenario makes us wonder about what will happen next. The outside world is a major part of the discussion, considering the life inside the silo is so well orchestrated that you're made to wonder about what's actually happening outside. With the second season, we have more questions, and somehow there will always be more questions than answers until the final episode. Let's jump into some of the most interesting theories about the outside world in Apple TV Plus's ongoing series, Silo. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Silo's myths about outside. From the very beginning, the show has maintained a narrative that is very much based on the inside of this mysterious structure, where people have managed to create their livelihoods. With the use of the infrastructure provided to them, they've managed to create a life and get used to the way things are here. Life inside the silo is quite busy, considering everyone is somehow involved in making sure that this society remains a livable space. If you think about it, there are ways in which people have made the life inside look quite normal, away from the sun and moon and the stars that fill up the sky. But it's not as if that life is so busy that people cannot find the time to focus on other aspects of life and question their reality. After all, the one question that bothers us all of our lives is our purpose in this world and the role that has been given to us. Often, the question leads us to some of the greatest discoveries, including what's beyond life here on this planet. But for the people inside the silo, it becomes what is outside their silo. Even though they're not entirely oblivious about the outside world, they do get to see some of it through the screen that shows the wasteland that exists outside. Some people do tend to question the visible reality and end up stumbling outside. Cleaning. This is a sort of punishment that requires an individual to go outside to clean the sensor that shows the outside world to the people inside the silo. Even though people might not intend to do it when first asked, they do go out and somehow end up cleaning the sensor anyway. But we now know the reason behind this, as people are shown a sham reality, and they try to make sure people inside the silo can see this. They go outside, see this reality, and eventually succumb to the poisonous air and die on the wasteland. But the questions remain. For example, Lucas, an individual who remains at the cafeteria on various days and stares out into the screen to look outside, focused on the mannerisms of the various planets and stars in the sky as they moved around in a certain pattern. In the last episode we witnessed Lucas presenting his observations to Judge Meadows, and he was getting somewhere with the idea that their planet is round and revolves around all these things. So yeah, whatever happens across the silo, there will always be questions, and these questions cannot be stopped. People will continue to wonder, and eventually the answers will lead them to different solutions, and some of these solutions might just be possible things that you do not really want to know. Something that makes you question your very reality. But we as viewers managed to theorize quite a few interesting developments as we glanced into this world, and these theories are quite an intriguing look at the world that exists outside the silo. Obvious facts. Before we jump into these theories, let's take a gander at some of the things that have been pretty well established about the outside world, based on whatever happened in the series so far. Ever since the first season began, people started wondering if the outside might be a lie, because some very sensible people started taking the punishment to go outside for cleaning, people who had some answers to the questions about their own reality. But by the end of the series, this theory was crushed because it turned out that the people who were sent outside to clean saw a false version of this outside, which showed that the world was absolutely fine and filled with beautiful scenery, up until a certain distance. Thanks to Juliet Nichols, we now know for sure that there is a wasteland outside the silo, and there are poisonous gases that can kill people. Apart from that, the first glance that we saw of the outside world managed to give us some very important details, like the fact that there are a lot more silos, and thus the one Juliet comes from might not be the only one that managed to survive. Second, far into the wasteland, one can see a skyline that is identical to the city of Atlanta in Georgia. If you consider it, the book that Juliet was reading before she was sent out to clean was titled Amazing Adventures in Georgia, a travel guide for kids. So there has to be a connection with Atlanta in the narrative. Now, let's jump into the intriguing theories the fans and other theorists have developed about the series regarding the outside world. Theory number 1, an experiment. Over the years, there have been a number of shows and other projects that have shown how tests are done on people in order to see how people behave in certain situations. The first thing based on that clearly points out everything that we have seen in the series so far is an experiment, a test of subjecting a certain population of humans to live in a certain manner. Now, there are obvious loopholes to that theory, considering that there are people who live outside. And how did someone simply manage to break out of a silo and survive, and go to another silo, which seems like another failed experiment itself? Well, what if the reality that Juliet saw outside the silo is actually a larger projection? A false representation of the world? I mean, it could be done in order to prevent Juliet from getting further away from the place where the silos were designed. The skyline of Atlanta might just be a mirage to indicate a post-apocalyptic world. That does make sense, considering even though some of the known silos so far have undergone an interesting twist of events, there are those that might not have reacted in this manner and are somewhat ideal to the test conditions. That does make sense somehow, and having seen projects and read literature similar to this situation, one wonders if that's true in this case. If this theory is true, I want to know why. Why go through the hassle of this level of budget in order to test if humans will survive or not? Theory number 2, a colony. Okay, so we're at the age of technology where most of the science fiction things that we have read are churning out to be true in every possible manner. There's a regular awe about things, and each new development makes us question the reality that we live in. One of the most popular developments amongst these is the fact that we now have plans for colonies on planets and moons. So, what if the silo is indeed a colony on the moon or some other extraterrestrial planet, and again is a test to see if humans can survive, thereby putting them underground and giving them a habitable circumstance to breathe? Imagine the view of Juliet Nichols heading out of her silo only to discover that Earth, or whatever she knows about her own planet, is visible or exhibiting similarities to a planet visible at a certain distance to this planet. That's definitely one of the best 80s sci-fi cinema twists right there. Theory number 3, preventing redundancy. The fact that there's more than one silo is definitely one of the biggest twists in the series, because life in one silo felt troublesome enough to make one wonder what might have happened in the other silos. And the answer did lie in the silo right next to this one. A mass of people had managed to head out and died in the process. But why is there more than one silo? The answer to that is something equally interesting. Imagine that the silos were indeed created for the purpose of saving humanity from an apocalypse, building structures and resources and livestock that ensure that there won't be any lack of these things in the post-apocalyptic world. Now, the people who built these knew there would be circumstances where people would fight and make the silo uninhabitable and eventually head out to their death. So it's basically one of those situations where you don't put all your eggs in one basket, ensuring that there is more than one basket. So in case one of these structures fails to sustain humans, there are other options, providing a chance that humanity will make it through these circumstances and away from the redundancies of life limited to society. Theory number 4, Bernard's plans. Ever since it was revealed that Bernard was the primary antagonist of the series, questions began to pop up regarding his true objectives, and we were left wondering about his true motive behind sending people out to clean. When Juliet manages to walk away from the silo, it becomes clear that she had done something that was completely unexpected on her part, thus making it clear that whatever Bernard had planned had entirely failed. He thought she would die right after she crossed the tree, but she continues to walk, only stumbling at the place where the former sheriff's corpse lay. So we now know for sure that cleaning as a punishment was not about letting these people outside, fulfilling their curiosity, but instead letting them die in the poisonous conditions outside, thus killing their inquisitive curiosity. But do you think Bernard himself has been outside, considering he's a very by-the-books person, and might have always remained in the silo, and yet he can manage to control how the outside world looks like to both the people inside and the individuals who are sent out for cleaning? What if Bernard is trying to hide something about the outside world from people, so the people inside the silo have a limited view, and every time someone manages to go outside, they're given a false view before they die? Theory number 5, the Russian doll theory. One has to credit whoever created the silo for the design, as it manages to keep so many people inside it, and at the same time, the design focuses on aspects of keeping a certain control over the lives of the people. It's not something that could have been designed that easily, and therefore there has to be a larger purpose to all of it. What if the world outside the silo that we've witnessed is just another silo? This would mean that the silo itself is part of a labyrinth of chambers that are interconnected, with the inhabitants being completely unaware of the true nature of their surroundings. The wasteland that we see outside could just be something that's part of a creation in order to make people buy into the narrative of the post-apocalyptic world. Now, that would be another amazing sci-fi twist that will be as mind-boggling as the past few theories. But the question remains, who created this intricate design of silos inside silos inside silos? Theory number 6, experiments on life. Panspermia is the theory that life on Earth did not originate by itself. It originated elsewhere and was triggered on Earth by a meteorite or some other space body. There's been a lot of literature that explored this lore, and people have often wondered the truth behind this theory, and how much we can rely on it. Imagine, life inside the silo was actually an experiment by some extraterrestrial beings who decided to replicate what they saw on Earth, or maybe some version of that, and thus the entire idea of the silo was to see if humans can bear each other in a circumstance like the silo. Maybe they read Hugh Howey's books and wanted to do a Mythbusters episode on the books, proving that humans won't survive in a situation like that. And somehow they proved that it wasn't possible, and everything that they did turned into a giant failure when Juliet managed to break out of it, making it clear that humanity, if perfected, can survive in all situations. I kinda like this one. It has a very Rick and Morty angle to it with some darker shades. Theory number 7. Lost. Remember the Damon Lindelof and J.J. Abrams masterpiece that was Lost? An entire series focused on the idea of an island and some survivors who managed to get on it following a plane crash. The sequence of events that followed often hinted at what the island was. One particular scenario indicated that they were in purgatory, even though later it turned out that it wasn't entirely about that either. But what if the silo is purgatory? Yeah, this theory has some major loopholes, but a fan thought about it, and fan theories do generate a significant amount of science fiction in the world. So maybe there are more levels of purgatory than levels of Dante's Inferno, and thus eventually these people will be let out into the world. Interesting on many levels, and yet questionable in a larger sense. Marvelous verdict. It's rather interesting how the show is made in a fashion riddled with a lot of questions, and people are left wondering about the reality that they're watching. Even though there are interesting similarities in this reality to the one we're subjugated to in our own lives, the similarities do tend to catch us completely off guard. Remember that tiny glitch that happened during the power outage? That raised a lot of questions regarding the silo in mere seconds. For a second, people could see a completely different version of the outside world through the screen at the cafeteria, and it was never mentioned again. It's an interesting world to explore, and maybe one of these theories will be able to come true. What's your theory about the world outside the silos? If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.